All right, everyone. So that brings us just to 12 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. We'll give it one more minute just to let a few more people file in, and then we'll begin today's presentation. Hopefully everyone's doing well today. You're in a place that's sunny and lovely weather. All right, so that's pretty much time for us. Let's go ahead and begin today's session. So welcome to the Graduate Diploma in Immigration and Citizenship Law Admission Information Session. This one is a very specific information session that we're going to be kind of diving deeper into two of our admission criteria, references and English language proficiency test scores. So we've been doing kind of general information webinars where we go through program overviews of the entire program and the benefits, as well as the entire admissions process. And we will be returning to those for the rest of June and all throughout July in preparation for the August 1st close of our application. But we wanted to utilize this webinar to really narrow in on a very specific few of our admission criteria. So today we're going to do some GDIP ICL highlights, go through the history of the program, some professional opportunities for individuals who graduate from our program, look at the courses, the delivery model of those courses, study plans, and tuition. And then we're going to follow it up with exactly what we're here to talk about, references and English language proficiency test scores, or ELPT scores for short. At the end of that session, we will go ahead and do some key takeaways. I'll take a look a little bit at our January 2025 admission cycle, and then we'll open up the Q&A for your questions. Now, just for information purposes, this is not a webinar that's going to reference any September 2024 applications. That admission cycle is still ongoing. We're still working through all of our applications. If you've applied, you'll have to continue to wait until late June, early July, and that's when we'll be providing all of our admission decisions. So no information about September 2024. We're always looking forward to January 2025 for this webinar. To begin, though, let's go ahead and start off with our land acknowledgement. So Queen's University is situated on unceded traditional Anishinaabe and Haudenosaunee territory, as well as myself located here in Kingston, Ontario. It is important for us to continually acknowledge the lands that we are physically situated on that was taken from the Indigenous population of Canada by colonizers who came over quite a while ago. We are still seeing atrocities come to light that have been perpetrated against the Indigenous peoples of Canada. It is horrible, but we want to continually make sure that even this small element that we can do within our webinars and all of our meetings begin with a land acknowledgement. It just demonstrates that we're keeping the Indigenous community and the populations and the peoples on the top of our mind at all points. There's some great activities going on at Queen's in regards to indigeneity, supporting Indigenous learners, educators, staff members, and the community at large. I encourage you to look up more information through the websites for the Office of Indigenous Initiatives and the Four Directions Indigenous Student Center. For any Indigenous learners who are entering the GDIP ICL program by self-identifying as Indigenous, we have tons of assistance for you and really want to support you as an Indigenous learner in our program. All right. For myself, this is me. I am the host of today's session. I'm the manager of admissions and recruitment. I've been doing this now for quite some time, since the end of 2021. So I've only missed one full admission cycle for this program. So I have all of the details, all the key information in regards to the admissions process. So hopefully you'll find this webinar helpful. If you have any additional questions, I'll provide the email address for my admissions team at the end of this session. All right, let's go ahead and take a look at the GDIP ICL program overall. So the GDIP ICL program began through an agreement between Queen's University and the College of Immigration and Citizenship Consultants, or the CICC. The CICC is the regulating body for regulated Canadian immigration consultants. They issue the entry to practice exam for our graduates who wish to become RCICs. And this is the only education pathway in English for individuals who wish to become immigration consultants. So it's a fantastic arrangement between us and the CICC. We've seen huge successes with our program ever since we began in January of 2021. Our graduates are excelling at the EPE. They are doing fantastic things in the immigration and citizenship ecosystem. They are helping bring in new Canadians and supporting Canadians already in Canada with their immigration and citizenship needs. So there is a huge amount of work being done in the program. It's an intensive program, but the rewarding element that our graduates find at the end is that they are better prepared to face what is necessary to support new Canadians and landed Canadians here in Canada. Our program was always scheduled to be provided entirely online, which is a huge benefit for this program. Everything's conducted online. There's no need to come to Kingston or even to Canada to conduct your studies in this program. Now, one thing I like to flag here, though, is that we are located in the Eastern Standard Time Zone. So make sure that if you are outside of Canada or outside the Eastern Standard Time Zone, you understand the impacts on your schedule, because there are mandatory live components that you need to attend online in order to participate in this class. So that's one thing you should start thinking about when thinking if this program is right for you at this time. We do have another program that offers a very similar program, but in French. It's the Université de Montréal's graduate diploma program. So there's only the two programs that provide you with eligibility to write the EPE with the CICC and to become a regulated Canadian immigration consultant. Final point here about our program is that we are really proud of our world-renowned instructors who are providing you with the education in all of our classes. We're talking about current lawyers, current immigration consultants, literally the people who wrote the textbooks in the course are teaching you about how to navigate immigration and citizenship law activities in our program. So when you're thinking about this program and if this program is right for you, obviously one of the big questions we face is, what do you do after the program? Now, I've already talked extensively about the CICC. It's because we see a lot of individuals who get into our program who are wanting to become regulated Canadian immigration consultants, or RCICs for short. So our program, as already mentioned, is the only English pathway to become eligible to write the entry to practice exam with the College of Immigration and Citizenship Consultants, which is the licensing exam to become an RCIC IRB, which means that you are immediately going to be eligible to practice in the immigration and citizenship ecosystem. So this is a program that has a direct pathway to a profession, to a very fruitful and powerful career. So we understand that that is a huge drawing point for our program, and we know that a majority of our applicants are interested in becoming RCICs. One of the elements that we identify when it comes to wanting to become an RCIC is that this is a great opportunity to be your own boss. RCICs sometimes work with already established practices, which is fantastic. There are RCICs that are supporting brand new graduates of our program, but also we know that there are people who want to forge their own path or work on their own schedule. And built into this program is supports for those to understand how to become your own boss by creating your own immigration consultancy practice. So again, whether you're going to be pre-established in an immigration firm, or if you're going to go on your own and forge your own path, there are supports for both of these individuals. What I really do encourage you to do, if you are thinking about becoming an RCIC, take a look at the CICC's website. I'm going to provide a link to that in the at the end of the session in the chat, and just learn more about their essential competencies, because that is how our program is built around, and what is required of becoming an RCIC. There are some additional things that you do post-graduation in our program, even after you write the EPE. So learn more by visiting their website. But that doesn't mean that that's the only pathway for individuals who are interested in this program. There are tons of other professional opportunities that are in store for our graduates. We see a lot of individuals take our program who are interested in government work. People who want to impact the future of immigration in Canada at the provincial, the municipal, provincial, or federal levels. We also see a lot of people get into NGO work. Lots of people want to get into private industry that has that international employment requirement. The reason for that is because the Canadian economy is primarily reliant on immigration and immigrant workers, temporary foreign worker programs, people who are in the country who are permanent residences or have no status currently in Canada, but they are here to work. It is integral for the Canadian economy for the support of immigration and citizenship law to make sure that we continue to run. So having expertise to bring to a private industry is going to be key when utilizing the education in this program. Policy development and implementation, as I've kind of mentioned with the government work, people who want to affect change when it comes to immigration and citizenship law look towards policy development and implementation as to an area where they can leverage their education for the better. People who want to continue on in the field of law, perhaps you are a current paralegal, you're a law clerk, you're in some form of law service, and you want to expand your abilities. This is a fantastic program for you. We also see current lawyers who just want to learn more about immigration and citizenship law, take an interest in our program and our education. We're the only game in town pretty much that has just a specific focus on immigration and citizenship that is so in-depth the way that our program is, that a ton of individuals already in a law profession would benefit from our program. Finally, human resources professionals. I mean, anybody who's in HR, myself included, I used to be an HR professional, knowing that there is a considerable component and emphasis placed on retention, employment opportunities, recruitment, selection, labor relations, and understanding laws. This is a fantastic program when it comes to anybody who's in some way, shape, or form impacting the lives of employees within an organization via HR. So again, tons of opportunities for individuals that are outside of that standard regulated Canadian immigration consultant pathway. Really take a look at our program at our website and really think about the components and whether this program is right for you and your professional opportunities moving forward. I'm sure there's something that would be really beneficial and impactful by taking our program that you want to do in the distant future. So let's talk about the program itself. Let's get into a little bit more details about what you would be experiencing in this program as a student. So we are currently opening up opened up our application for January 2025, which means that we are accepting applications for full-time and part-time 24-month study plans. So this is how we're going to break down the two different study plans for our incoming students. As a full-time student beginning in January, you'll take 3 courses per term for 3 consecutive terms. You'll finish the program just at the kind of the midway point of December 2025 by taking the full 3 courses each term. You'll work right through the summer and you'll be ready to go for the end of December 2025. For part-time students, looks a little bit different. Part-time students on the 24-month study plan will take 1 to 2 courses per term, depending on the term, and will finish up the program just around the middle of December 2026. So there's not really much difference between the two aside from the number of courses you are taking. This is a good point for me to indicate that individuals who wish to be a full-time student in our program need to be mindful that there are regulations and policies in place, not only with our program, but with the School of Graduate Studies and Postdoctoral Affairs, who manages grad studies across Queen's University, that restricts individuals from being full-time employed and be full-time students. So you'll have to either reduce your professional requirements down to a part-time capacity, or you should consider our part-time study plan as presented here. One of the things we also hear about from prospective applicants is how is the course structured? Now, while it does indicate that you can see here there are 3 courses for the first term for a January start, how are those courses delivered? And the way that they're delivered is kind of separately with ICL 810, our introductory foundation level course, being provided in the first 6 weeks of the program solo. All of our students will go through ICL 810 together for those first 6 weeks. And then after that, after a week break, I believe there's still going to be a week break before you start your next courses. Full-time students will take ICL 820 and 830 concurrently, while part-time students will take ICL 820 as their next course. So you can see the separation there. You're not doing all 3 courses as a full-time student together. You do 1 course to start, Then you do the following 2 together. And then for part-time students, you do the first course and then the second course subsequently after that. Now, while that information is really key, it kind of is more important because of the tutorials built into this program. There are mandatory tutorials for all of the courses that need to be attended live on Zoom in the Eastern Standard Time Zone. Much of the course is provided outside of a classroom setting via self-directed learning opportunities, things like readings, online activities, assessments, quizzes. Those are done kind of on your own pace during the week of your courses. But those tutorials do take place that you do have to be sitting at your computer, ready to unmute, have your camera off, and participating with your fellow classmates and your instructor. Tutorials take place on either weeknight evenings or on the weekends midday. So typically for our weeknight evening tutorials, they take place between 6 p.m. and 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Weekend midday tutorials take place between 11 a.m. and 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. For everybody going into their first term, you should know that there's an additional hour-long plenary tutorial for ICL 810. That takes place on Tuesday nights between 8 and 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Again, more information for you to take away from this webinar with to understand how it will impact your professional and personal lives. Because again, these are mandatory. You have to attend them. Missing a tutorial in a 6-week course, which that ICL 810 course is hugely impactful to your final grade. So make sure you are available to attend everything live and that you have plenty of opportunity to participate in this course with as much focus as you can. You need to treat this course almost like a full-time job. The amount of hours needed to participate in this course are a lot. And we see students struggle because they don't fully understand the capacities that they have in regards to how much time they can dedicate towards the program. Committing yourself now is really key in order to prepare yourself for that January start. Understand what the requirements are and know how much time you need to commit to this program. It's significant, but it's hugely impactful. What we do within this program is we develop you in the same way that you will be experiencing life as an immigration consultant. The fast-paced world of immigration and citizenship law is it's quite overwhelming if you don't have the proper training. And our alumni who graduate from our program, they tell us that they are well prepared not only for the EPE, but for life as an immigration consultant because of the impact of the program. So again, it's hard, it's intensive, it's a lot for a lot of students, but it is as rewarding afterwards once you get into the working world. Let's talk tuition because this is another vital component that we want to provide information about. So for everybody who is offered admission into our program, there's a one-time tuition deposit of $400 to secure your spot in the program. So tuition takes place once you begin the term. Once we enroll you in courses, tuition will be populated within your student account, but that $400 amount will need to be paid before the start of term. So anybody who's applying for January, you'll have to pay that before January rolls around in order to make sure you secure your space in the program. But that $400 does apply towards your first term tuition, and it's the only point in which you need to provide a tuition deposit. The tuition deposit is non-refundable, so just be mindful of that. For tuition itself, you pay that during the term only for the courses you are enrolled in that term. So full-time students will only pay for the first 3 courses. Part-time students will pay for 2 courses for the first term. There is additional assistance to break down that tuition payment into 4 equal installments across your term, which is via the Queen's Tuition Payment Plan. You apply for that via your Solus student account once tuition is populated. It's something we provide to all. It's information we provide to all of our incoming students. So more information on the payment plan will be provided to anybody who's made an offer of admission. One additional note on tuition, our program is not OSAP eligible, which means in Ontario, there's no provincial funding from the provincial government to support your studies in this program. It is unfortunate. We wish we were OSAP eligible. We're just not. That also then restricts other provinces and territories and their provincial funding. So that's why we offer other opportunities for funding. We have an entrance bursary that full-time applicants can apply for if you can demonstrate financial need. We do have some bursaries available to a select few students. Also, we have two partnerships. We have the RBC line of credit partnership, which offers a line of credit to individuals who can provide a Canadian cosigner and demonstrate their need. There are some RBC representatives available that you can talk to via our tuition and financing page. Also, we've just recently partnered with Windmill Micro Lending, which is a charitable organization that offers support for immigrants to Canada. Doesn't matter when you came to Canada, so long as you have immigrated to Canada. And there's a loan opportunity of up to $15,000 to support your tuition with our program. Again, more information about all of those programs will be made available on our tuition and financing page. And we're just in the process of updating that page, so it should be ready to go by the end of this week with all the information about RBC, about Windmill Micro Lending, and about our updated tuition and fees. Again, learning more about this program is really key. It's why you're here today, but there's more you can do. There will be other webinars that will be hosted all the way up until the end of July. You can take our self-assessment, which is a survey we provide via our website, and also visit all of our web pages, review everything, take a look at our student handbook for more information about the program. But if you need any additional questions answered, immigrationdiploma@queensu.ca is who you contact to have any of your questions answered. We don't do anything via phone or video call or meetings. Everything is done via email, and that's the email address you're going to want. All right, let's go ahead and dive now into the meat and potatoes of references and English language proficiency test scores. Now, when it comes to references, it's important to note that every single applicant to our program must provide two different references. With their application. There are two different types of references we accept with this program. There are professional references and academic references. Every applicant needs to provide one professional reference at minimum. Now, the reason for that is because there's some very key restrictions when it comes to who should or should not be providing an academic reference. Academic references are only accepted for applicants who have studied in a post-secondary program within 2 years from the month of their application. So at this point, because the application is opened June 1, if you studied in a post-secondary program, a bachelor's degree, master's degree, PhD, college program, graduate certificate, graduate diploma program, if you've studied in any of those programs beyond June 2022, you don't need to provide an academic reference. It's only for people who have studied between June 2022 and the date of their application. So for example, we have an individual who has been studying in their master's program and they finished up in March of 2023. That applicant would need to provide one professional reference and one academic reference. And that academic reference must be from their most recent studies. Even if they have, so say for this example, they have a master's program now that they completed in 2023, but they completed their bachelor's degree back in 2008. We're not going to accept an academic reference from the 2008 bachelor's studies. It has to be from those master's studies, the most recent, because that's going to be the freshest individual to provide a really strong reference on your behalf. For everyone else, so if you have no recent studies within the last 2 years from the month of your application, everybody must provide two professional references. Let's go ahead and break down what a professional reference is. A professional reference is a current or former manager or supervisor from a domestic or international place of business, from a volunteer work opportunity, either from full-time or part-time employment. It's someone who has identified themselves as your manager or supervisor. It's someone who can provide information about your abilities in the workplace. It's someone who has agreed to submit their documents, their reference documents on your behalf before September 1st. And it's someone who you can contact to talk to them about this request. So it's somebody that you're in communication with who was a manager or is a manager or supervisor, and someone who's going to be able to fill out the form on your behalf. Who's not a suitable professional reference? People who don't count, coworkers, colleagues, friends, equals within your organization. Someone who is not a manager or supervisor. Those are not professional references. We get a lot of references from individuals who are colleagues, or they share a cubicle or a workspace, or they work on equivalent programs. They're not managers or supervisors. They need to be kind of in that hierarchical structure of an organization, one step above, someone who reports in or who you report into as an employee. Someone from another department or area who has no direct supervision over your work is not a suitable professional reference. Family members are not professional references. Family members aren't solid references anyway. So don't utilize family members. Don't utilize a reference who will not or cannot provide the forms on time. Someone who can't provide their information, someone who won't, someone who has no access to their email address, and someone who just maybe cannot kind of meet the needs of the document deadline. Make sure you are talking to your reference and you have confidence in them that they are going to submit documents on your behalf. Similar situations for academic references. So who's a suitable academic reference is very, very similar to a suitable professional reference. Current or former professor, instructor, TA, again, within that most recent study. Domestic or international post-secondary institutions are completely fine. We know that some people study in India, in the UK, in Australia. They do master's or PhD programs, what have you. It doesn't matter the location of the institution, provided that it is still, those studies are within that 2-year window from the month of your application. It needs to be someone who has educated you, who can speak to your abilities within a classroom setting, someone, again, that you can communicate with, and someone who will complete the form in full and submit it back to us by September 1st. Who's not a suitable academic reference? A classmate is not a suitable reference. Someone from a post-secondary institution older than 2 years. So as I mentioned from that example, that individual who completed their bachelor's degree in 2008, we don't need an academic reference from that individual. Someone who cannot provide information, who won't provide information, someone you are not in contact with, and someone who can't fill out that form. Again, you need to have confidence that these individuals will submit documents on your behalf. And the way that you get these references to submit documents on your behalf is by providing their up-to-date contact information in the application. Applicants have no involvement in the document process for references. What you do is you enter in the 2 references' full names, their current email addresses, their current positions, their current departments, their current employers or institutions, and their telephone numbers into the application. There's 2 sections for those. Once you submit your application, emails are automatically sent to those email addresses that you listed in the application. So make sure they're spelled correctly. And it's at that point that the timer starts ticking for those individuals. They need to receive the documents, complete the forms in full, and send it back to the School of Graduate Studies and Postdoctoral Affairs on your behalf to complete the reference process. If you don't have your references' contact information or any of the information here, talk to them ahead of time to gather this information. What's really key here is that you know that you're not involved in the process as I've just outlined. It needs to be an interaction between the School of Graduate Studies and Postdoctoral Affairs and your references. You can communicate with them once you submit your application so that they are on the lookout for emails, but you should have no contact or no connection to your reference document. If you do, if you tamper, if you have any involvement, that application will be or may be removed from consideration. So it's why we encourage you to talk to your reference ahead of time, talk to them during this process, and then thank them afterwards once you confirm that they've submitted the documents on your behalf. Again, everyone needs to provide at least one professional reference, and academic references are only accepted from those who have studied in a post-secondary program from June 2022 up until the day of their application. Anything beyond June 2022 will not be accepted. What's really key here is that when you're talking to your references, make sure they check their or their spam and junk folders for any of the emails that may be coming from sgsapp@queensu.ca. What you can do, though, is you can track the submission of your reference documents via your application. You can log into the application system. You can see the documents that are still outstanding or what has been received. So you can communicate with your references to say, hey, I'd really like you to fill out this form. The deadline is September 1st. Could you please hurry up and do so? Or again, thank those references who provide documents on your behalf. Again, don't use family members, friends, colleagues, coworkers, equals. Needs to be individuals for a professional reference in a position of authority, managers or supervisors from a current or former place of business. And if you have two managers or a manager and a supervisor from the same workplace, that's acceptable, and we can accept that for a reference. Same with volunteer work. Volunteer supervisors can be utilized as a professional reference. What I really want to stress here, the number one reason why we don't see applications for our review purpose is because they're missing documents. And the number one document that we see missing are reference documents. And the application fee is non-refundable. If that reference does not provide documents on your behalf, your application will not be reviewed. And because it's out of your control, you need to interact with your references to make sure they are comfortable providing documents on your behalf. Let's go through two scenarios that I've developed here just to kind of get you thinking about what type of reference is needed for your situation. These are fictitious scenarios that I've just made up, but it will help kind of understand what's needed. So in this scenario, we have a part-time applicant for January 2025. They completed their undergraduate degree in 2019, and they completed their master's degree in 2021. They've been working as a business development manager for the last 3 years. So they've just applied first thing, June 1st, 2022. What types of references should this applicant submit? Now, hopefully you've all said the correct answer, which is 2 professional references. So their academics are outside of that 2-year window. 2021 is beyond June 2022 when they would have applied in June 2024, which is that 2-year buffer. They cannot submit an academic reference with their application. They need to submit 2 professional references. Scenario number 2, we have a full-time applicant this time, and full-time, part-time applicant, it doesn't matter. Both need to provide the same number of references. Everybody needs to provide at least 1 professional reference, and the same restrictions apply to academic references. So this individual completed their undergraduate degree in 2019, same as the previous scenario. They completed their master's degree in 2023. They've been working in HR for the last 7 years during their master's studies. So they must have done their master's on a part-time basis. What types of references should this applicant submit? And hopefully you're saying to yourself, it's 1 academic and 1 professional reference. So the academic reference needs to come from the master's studies. So even though their undergraduate degree was completed fairly recently, I mean, within the last 5 years, we need to see an academic reference from the most recent studies from that master's program. And then the professional reference can be from any current or former manager or supervisor. Ideally, they have a good relationship with their HR department manager or their direct manager, and they can provide that as a professional reference. So hopefully that gives you a sense as to what you need to provide in regards to contact information for your references for your application. Let's move on now to English language proficiency test scores and information on the admission criteria for this coming term. So this is a little bit of a different admission criteria. So the references, every single applicant needs to provide 2. ELPT scores, only a certain number of applicants will need to provide that based off of their English language proficiency. This is a key part of the admission review process, and it's not something you submit at a later date. This is a requirement of our review of your application. So it's really key that you learn what the exemptions are to having to provide an ELPT score, or what the scores we accept are if you know that you need to provide one for admission consideration. So really, think about your needs now. We are already into mid-June. The deadline for documents for a January 2025 application is September 1st, end of day. So you have a short period of time to gather these documents together, including taking and completing an ELPT score. So prepare now if you know that you need to submit an ELPT score, or understand the exemption so you know how you'll proceed with your application. We don't issue conditional offers of admission based off of ELPT scores. So you'll have to either provide it or you meet the exemption where you don't have to provide it. Those are the only two decisions we can make with our application, or your application. So let's talk about the scores we accept. We accept KLCE, so the computer edition. We accept IELTS academic. We accept TOEFL IBT, or the internet-based test. And we accept TOEFL PBT, or the paper-based test. For the first three, we accept both the test center and the online home version. For TOEFL PBT, that's a very specific, geographically specific test that you would only be able to take in a test center. So if you are remote or if you don't have access to a test center close by, the online home-based versions of those tests are completely acceptable. So let's talk about the scores we accept for each of those tests. You need to meet the required score to be considered for admission. So for KLCE, you need to meet an overall 70 with no band below 70. For IELTS academic, you need to meet an overall 7.0 with no band below 7.0. For TOEFL IBT, you need to meet an overall score of 101 with no band below 25 out of 30, but listening needs to actually be no lower than a 26 out of 30. So a little bit of a difference there. And then TOEFL PBT is an overall score of 607. There are no exceptions to the test score requirements for the 4 scores that we accept. So that means we know that there are individuals who will apply for our program with an 8.0 IELTS academic, but their writing score is at a 6.5. We cannot accept that test for admission consideration. And the reason we're so strict about this is because we are the only point in which an individual who wants to become a regulated Canadian immigration consultant needs to demonstrate English language proficiency. Also, we're an English language program. We want you to be successful in this program. So you need to demonstrate it at the admissions phase, because when you go to write the EPE, there's no submission of an ELPT score at that point. They utilize our intensive program to meet the English language proficiency requirement. So it's why we require it upfront with the application. If you already have a score, that one of these scores that you've done in the past that's still eligible, it's a 2-year window from the month of your application, very similar to the academic reference. And if your score doesn't meet, you'll have to retake the test. If your score does meet and you've done a KLCE, IELTS academic, TOEFL IBT, or TOEFL PBT, you can submit that for the admission review process. We don't also change the types of tests we accept. We don't accept CELPIP, we don't accept CLB, Duolingo, Pearson, IELTS General, or any other test that's out there currently. We may update this soon. You can monitor our application website, our admissions website, for more information, but it won't change for January 2025 applications. If you have an IELTS general score that meets our admission criteria, we won't accept it. Don't request us to accept it. We just don't in this process. You have to utilize the accepted tests that we accept for our program for the admission review process. So as I've already mentioned, if you are applying as of, say, the end of June, if you have a test score that is no older than June 2022, you can utilize that for the admission review process, provided it's one of the approved ELPTs we accept. Anything older than June 2022 will not be acceptable for admission consideration. But not everyone needs to provide an ELPT score. There are 2 exemptions that we provide for January 2025 applications for your consideration to be exempt from providing an ELPT score. One is that you self-identify as a native English speaker, and 2 is that you meet all education exemption criteria. There is a third that we typically talk about in these webinars. It's the ESLA 150 English for Academic Purposes program hosted by the Queen's School of English. We do not make this pathway available for January applicants. Anybody who lists that on their application, that will be pulled, and they will need to either provide an ELPT score, or they will need to demonstrate that they meet one of our exemptions. We cannot offer ESLA 150 pathways for January applicants, and you'll have to wait for a future September application. So let's go through the exemption criteria in depthly here. So the first exemption criteria is you self-identify as a native English speaker. So there's no specific definition that defines who is or who isn't a native English speaker, but there are some elements that you can consider when you are thinking about self-identifying as a native English speaker. So you can consider whether you were born and raised in a country where English is an official language. You can consider that you have used nothing but English throughout your entire education career at all levels, elementary, secondary, post-secondary, and beyond. Some things that you can also consider, you haven't taken any English as a second language programs or courses. You have constant contact with English throughout your personal and professional activities. Those are elements you need to take into consideration for you to make the decision if you self-identify as a native English speaker or if you don't. If you do self-identify, please ensure you list that as the reason why you are requesting an exemption from an ELPT score. We get a lot of individuals who think they meet both requirements, or they know they meet the self-identify, and they list the education exemption. We can only go with the one exemption that you select on the application. So you either select self-identify or you select education. If you select education, you will no longer be considered for the self-identify as a native English speaker element. So we will then review your application and make the determination whether you meet the exemption criteria or not. So answer the question correctly. One thing to note here as well, even if you meet an exemption criteria, the admission committee still reserves the right to request an ELPT score from any applicant at any point in the admission review process. So even if you meet the exemption, you may be requested to provide one for some reason that the admission committee deems correct. So just be prepared that if you're borderline or if you're hesitant about this requirement, and if you know that you don't meet the education exemption, you should probably prepare to write an ELPT score just to have more time to prepare for the test and to make sure you meet that score requirement. Let's go ahead and talk about our education exemption. This is our second exemption that we offer for January applicants. To meet the education exemption criteria, you must have 4+ years of consecutive full-time academic study at a university in which English was the medium of instruction. So let's break down those bolded parts there. 4+ years and consecutive full-time academic study. That's essentially that you've studied an honors bachelor's degree with no unnatural break. You've done like a fall winter term or a winter summer fall term, and the only time that you've taken off was a short period during the summer months. If you don't have 4+ years, if you did a 3-year degree, that is insufficient alone to meet the education exemption. Now, if you did a 3-year Bachelor of Arts degree, say, and then immediately followed it up with a 1-year Bachelor of Education, and there's no unnatural break, you just took a summer off, that can be combined together to make up 4+ years. The same with a master's program. If you did a 3-year general bachelor's degree and then immediately followed that with a 2-year master's program, and both were full-time, they can be combined together to make up the 4+ years of consecutive study. And they need to be full-time consecutive study. If at any point during your admissions or during your education that you had to drop down to a part-time study plan, or if you took a term off, that disrupts the consecutive nature of your studies, and it also doesn't make you a full-time student. You would then not meet the education exemption. And we do extensive reviews of your transcripts to see if you do meet this exemption that you are requesting. Another bolded item there, university studies. We don't accept studies that are at a non-university level. So it has to be at a university, both the bachelor's, the master's, and any additional studies that you've conducted to meet the requirement. College programs don't meet the requirement. Also, the final point there, English was the medium of instruction throughout your studies. We need proof to indicate that you studied in English. We know that there are many international institutions in countries where English is not the primary language that do educate individuals in English. And while you may have attended one of those programs, if it's not identified in your documents provided with your application, we cannot review your application until proof is provided. The way that you provide that proof is through a medium of instruction letter. you need to provide us with a letter officially from that institution that demonstrates that English was the medium of instruction, along with your transcripts. Transcripts need to be provided by all applicants from all studies. And if it notes on the transcript that the medium of instruction was English, that's completely acceptable. But if it's not, we need a specific letter included with your transcripts to let us evaluate the terms you studied, to make sure that there were 4 years of study, to make sure you were a full-time student, and to make sure that your medium of instruction was English. Take this, for example. This is a University of Calcutta example of a medium of instruction letter. It's officially signed off by somebody with the institution, and it does identify right there the medium of instruction for this program was English. Also, what you should do is you should have this letter identify the length of your program and your start and end dates of your studies. This one flags for us as a potential issue because it only indicates that it's a 2-year program. So this needs to be in support of, or in addition to, another program and medium of instruction letter. If it's a 4-year program, it should just state you began on this date, ended on this date, you were full-time throughout. So some real key takeaways here: know the exemptions in depth and know how you are applying. There's a question built into the application that asks you, how do you need to proceed with the ELPT requirement? And it has 4 options. And one of the options is not viable for January applicants, and that's the ESLA 150. So there are only 3 options that you should utilize. You self-identify as a native English speaker, you are requesting consideration under the education exemption, or you are providing an ELPT score for the admission review process. Know what you are providing so that we have all of the documents necessary for our assessment. If you request an exemption and it's not approved, you will need to provide an ELPT score with no exceptions. That's a non-reviewable, non-appealable decision by our admissions committee. So it's why we say that if you are borderline, or if you think you need to provide an ELPT score, go forward with it now so you have more time to book your test, to study for it, to execute the test, and to submit the score by the September 1st deadline. Please don't contact us asking us for additional consideration outside of the exemptions that I've listed here. We don't utilize professional experience, where you conducted your studies, your citizenship, or your geographic location and daily interactions in English for an exemption review process. We can't utilize those pieces. Citizenship, it's a moot point because we know that people come to Canada bringing with them mother tongues and native languages that are not English. And it's vital for them to continually utilize that language, not only to uphold their traditions and their values and heritage, but to interact with family members, friends in their community. It's extremely vital to Canada. That is how we are made up. But with the study in this program, it's all conducted in English. So we need you to demonstrate English language proficiency. And with professional experience, or where you conducted your studies, we can't utilize that information. We don't know. There's no quantitative data we can pull from that information to indicate that you are proficient in English. So make sure that if you don't meet our exemptions, you don't request any additional exemptions, and you begin to prepare for that ELPT score submission. Let's go through a few scenarios before we open up the questions here. So scenario number 1, it's a full-time applicant for January 2025. They are requesting an education exemption based on their post-secondary studies. So they are going under the second option. They've completed a 3-year Bachelor's of Science degree from Punjab University in India from September 2006 to June 2009. They then completed a 2-year HR diploma from St. Lawrence College. So they moved to Kingston, or maybe Cornwall or Brockville, wherever St. Lawrence College campuses are located. And they studied between September 2011 and April 2013. They then completed a master's degree from the University of Toronto, and they were studying between September 2013 and June 2016. So in this case, this person's requested an education exemption. Do you think that they would be exempt from providing an ELPT? I hope that you are shouting at your screens. No, this applicant is not eligible for an education exemption, specifically for these reasons. Their undergraduate degree was only 3 years in length. So that alone cannot be utilized for the 4+ years of consecutive full-time academic study. We also can't use the St. Lawrence College program because it's not university study. Also, the master's study is quite a ways away from the end of the bachelor's studies, 4 years. So it's no longer consecutive. And alone, it's 3 years technically in length here. Maybe it was 2, depending on what the circumstances was. But the bachelor's and the master's alone cannot be utilized for the education exemption, and they can't be combined together because they aren't concurrent. So this individual, while well educated, may be very proficient in English, must demonstrate English language proficiency with our office. The second scenario. So this is a part-time applicant, and the same thing with the references. Both full-time and part-time applicants need to meet the same admission criteria. So the same rules apply for ELPT score submission and exemptions. So they are requesting an exemption as they want to attend the ESLA 150 English for Academic Purposes program with the School of English. Their application indicates that their post-secondary studies do not meet the education exemption, and they don't self-identify as a native English speaker. Is this person eligible for an ELPT exemption? And again, hopefully you're screaming at your screens. They are not, because the ESLA 150 pathway is not available for January applicants. Please don't select that on your application. The final scenario, we have another part-time applicant. They are requesting an exemption based on their post-secondary studies. So they've completed a 4-year honors Bachelor of Nursing degree from Holy Name University in the Philippines from September 2016 to April 2020. They then completed a master's degree from the University of British Columbia. So they've come from the Philippines to BC. And they completed that program from September 2020 to June 2021. They began but did not complete a PhD program from also UBC from September 2022 to January 2023. So they just did a full term and left the program. Is this person eligible for an ELPT exemption? Now, the classic answer from my human resources days that applies over to this scenario is it depends. We can't give a yes or a confirmation at the review stage or at the communication, the pre-application stage. The only way we can make decisions on exemptions is through an application and documents. So this individual may potentially meet the exemption based on that bachelor's studies. So they'll need to provide a transcript from that Holy Name University, which they should be providing for their application anyway. And they need to confirm that the medium of instruction from that institution was in English. Because the master's studies alone is not a basis of admission. So everything's going to hinge on that 4-year undergraduate degree. And the UBC program, the PhD program, that's not applicable to this process either. So this person will have to make sure that they provide all the documents. If everything proves yes, that English was the medium of instruction and they studied full years on a full-time basis in that Bachelor of Nursing program, they would be eligible for an ELPT exemption. All right, I'm going to go ahead and open up the Q&A now. Just to let you know about the application process, though, is that our application is open now for January 2025. It will close September 1st, end of day. So make sure you have your, August 1st, sorry, August 1st, the application will close end of day. Anybody who submits their application will have until September 1st to submit their documents. So you can log back into your application, you can upload your transcripts, things that were missed the first time around, or you can have official documents sent on your behalf directly to the SGSPA office. So make sure that you are applying before the end of day, August 1st. Start gathering information now, do all of your reviews, attend a future webinar, and yeah, hopefully this is definitely of interest to you. Please note there are no refunds to the application fee. There are no deferrals for a later start date for January applicants. You can't defer to September. You will have to await the September application. All right, I'm going to go ahead and open up the Q&A now. With the Q&A, you can go ahead and give questions that you like a thumbs up to make sure that they are flagged with us, as that's an important question that a lot of people want to learn about. I'm going to make sure that you can upvote. And what I ask you to do is to ask one question at a time. Don't spam your questions. We're going to try and get to everybody as quickly as we can. Don't provide any personal information as well in your question. And then I'm going to also post our website, immigrationdiploma.ca, as well as our Facebook page, facebook.com/QueensLawGWICL. But I'll put this up and we will start taking questions. All right, let's see. My degree only shows period of study in month and year time frame, but no specific month, date of study start and end, April 2011 to April 2013. So can I use a degree issue date, August 7th, 2013 as a study date end? No. Degree issue date is not the same as when you ended your program. For myself, I recall ending my bachelor's degree in April, and I didn't graduate until July. I'm not in studies in May and June, so that doesn't apply towards the education exemption in my case. So this individual, you'll need to get documented information directly from your institution as to what the start date and the end dates are for your program. That's what we'll need to see the exact time frame that you were in your studies. Also, one thing to note is that we don't take equivalencies into consideration. We know that some 3-year bachelor's degrees at international institutions are equivalent to a 4-year degree here in Canada. But an equivalency is not the same as time spent in the program. Only studying 3 years, even if it's at value a 4-year diploma or a 4-year degree, is still only 3 years of study. All right, let's see what else. Will GPAs be rounded up? For example, a 0.2 grade away from a B, or would the access pathway be a better idea? We do our best to give all of our applicants the benefit of the doubt when it comes to our GPA assessment. And perhaps the GPA conversion will be different than what's already existent on your application. If you want to apply for the access pathway, you are welcome to. However, the access pathway comes with a 5-year minimum requirement of professional experience that is relevant to the program in either the fields of immigration and citizenship work or in law. If you don't have that professional experience, don't apply via the access pathway. So you'll need to consider just providing your documents and hoping that the GPA conversion works out in your favor. We will do our best for the benefit of the applicant. Let's see. Do professional references need to be in work or personal email address format? It is preferred if it is a work email address and it is sent directly to them. If you only have available their personal email address, that is acceptable as well. We will scrutinize those extensively to make sure that there was no tampering in the reference process. So make sure it comes directly from them, but utilize the email address that you can access for your referees. I am wondering what will be required from the references. Is it just one document that needs to be completed by them? I would like to give a bit of insight to my potential references. Excellent question. It is a form. It's a single form. It typically is one, maybe it'll cross over to a second page, but what we ask them is for them to provide how they know you and their relationship, what the time frame was. And then we ask them some questions about how you are in your English proficiency, how you are in your judgment, your initiative, your work abilities. And then there's an opportunity for them to write a comment, or they can select to upload a letter of recommendation. So if they've already drafted something in the past for you, they can upload that in place of writing out the same information. It should be a fairly quick turnaround. I believe one of my team members here is answering how long references will have to spend on this document. Should be anywhere between 10 to 30 minutes. I mean, what we encourage everybody with this application is that the more effort that's spent, the more it reflects to us of your interest in the program, and the same for references. You need to encourage your references to take the time to complete the document in full and to provide a narrative. If we get reference documents that just kind of check the boxes with no narrative or information provided, it doesn't really reflect well on you as an applicant that you haven't selected a strong referee who will provide information on your behalf in full. So make sure you talk to your references and ask them to spend the time on it. We know everybody's busy, but this is a significant component of the application process that everybody needs to provide one. We receive thousands of references every single intake. We want them to be fulsome and provide narrative about you. We endeavor to read every single word that's on there. It's important for us. and it should be important for you and them to provide the proper information on your behalf. But that's a great question. Thank you. Somebody's asking about whether they are eligible for exemption. What I can tell you is we don't do pre-assessments on exemptions or admission eligibility. So you're providing us with your information about, I've studied this during these periods of time at this institution. We're not going to provide a pre-assessment and confirm without an application submitted and all of your documents. What you need to do as an applicant is to review the admission criteria and confirm yourself how you're proceeding with the application. If you think you meet the education exemption and you provide all of your documents, select that on the application and provide your documents. We will conduct our assessment and we will base our decision off of what has been provided. If you don't select the correct thing on the application, if you select the education exemption and you don't meet it, we'll let you know, and then you'll have to submit an ELPT score by that September 1st document deadline. So do your reviews, do your research, apply, and then make sure you are applying correctly. But we don't provide pre-assessments. My transcripts do not have grades mentioned on them, but OCPA. Do I need to get another document that mentions grades? Yes, you will need to get transcripts. Transcripts should outline courses taken, grades achieved, and the credit associated with each of those courses. Some institutions call them transcripts, some call them mark sheets, some call them summary documents. It needs to outline all of your years of study, all of your terms of study, and all of the courses you've taken with grades associated with it. Without any grades, we can't utilize it for the our admission review process. Somebody's asking, I've completed my consecutive 4 years bachelor's degree and 2-year master's degrees from different colleges under the same university. Do I need to submit separate English medium instruction letters for graduation and post-graduation? That's a good question. I would say yes, because they're going to be different colleges, different elements, and even within the same college, there might be different language requirements. So just for ease for the admission review process, submit all the documents. Both documents in that case. How much time is expected to be invested in the course for the part-time studies? I would say commit full-time hours, even as a part-time student. The intensity in the program is significant, so just make sure that you are dedicating as much time necessary to this program. Readings alone take up a considerable amount of time. Not to mention the interactions you're going to be doing, the requirements for the tutorials to be there live, the online assessments. The first course is a 12-week course condensed down to 6 weeks. It's a lot for individuals to really manage. So make sure you are managing it accordingly. You are reducing your personal and professional responsibilities. You have a support network who will be able to help you, and really you'll benefit hugely through that. I'm going to go ahead, because we're after 1 here, I'm going to shut down the questions and we're just going to answer what's available, and then we'll call it a day. Hi, if a student studied a 4-year bachelor's at a university and has already submitted their transcripts in their application, however, the medium of instruction, which will indicate that the entire program was taught in English, will only be released on a later date due to the local university's processing time, is there any way for the student to submit the MOI document for consideration for the exemption, or will it no longer be considered? No, absolutely it will be considered if it's submitted later. Submit the documents with your application that you can. If you're waiting for a document to be submitted, and if it's going to occur before August 1st, I would say hold off on submitting your application. The application process is not timed. It's not a process of we look at how early you applied. We will accept and review all applications throughout the entire admissions cycle. So if your document's not going to be submitted until, say, mid-July, you can wait on your application and have that document ready to go and submit everything at that point. If it's not going to be ready until closer to that September 1st deadline, submit your application by the August 1st deadline. And then once that document's ready to go, have it sent to us at immigrationdiploma@queensu.ca on your behalf. If it comes from you, there's potentials for document tampering, which is why we request transcripts or documents to be sent directly from your institution after your application. So it will still be considered, absolutely. Can I use my back home university reference referee? So that's a vague question because I don't know what the timeline is. If you studied at your Sri Lankan university within the last 2 years, yes, an academic reference can be utilized from that study. If you studied that program back in 2009 and you're applying now, no, that will not be acceptable for an academic reference. Professional references from back in 2009 from an international organization absolutely can be accepted for a professional reference requirement. Can I apply for the access pathway? You're welcome to apply for the access pathway, provided that you meet the admission criteria of the access pathway. I promised links, and I'm going to put those into the chat now. And make sure you review what is required of the access pathway. It's not just a pathway for those who don't meet the GPA requirement. You have to have relevant professional experience, 5 years total minimum, to be eligible for that pathway. And if you don't have a bachelor's degree, that's going to be an issue with your application. You have to have some undergraduate study and professional experience for the access pathway, but that's more for an email question, I believe, and we can provide guidance at that point. My transcripts don't have back pages. This won't be an issue. Absolutely not. Won't be an issue. We can accept, obviously, the documents you can provide. When do admission offers, conditional offers come out after a student submits an application? It's a lengthy process for our program. For January, we're looking at the end of October, early November for offers to go out. I just graduated bachelor's of nursing program at MacEwan University, a 4-year program. Do I need to study master's or any related program first before I apply to this program? Absolutely not. You can apply with your MacEwan University studies, and hopefully you did very well and you meet the B average. With this individual, you just graduated, you will need an academic reference and a professional reference. All right, that ends the session. Thank you very much for participating today. We know it's a very specific kind of a niche webinar today, but we will be getting back to our general program overview webinars. Also, we're going to be hosting a larger webinar that has our academic director, Sherry Aiken, and a couple of alumni answering questions that are sent in prior to the session. So watch your mailing list. If you have signed up for our mailing list, please watch for emails from us about future webinars. You can also visit our webpage, immigrationdiploma.ca, and email us immigrationdiploma@queensu.ca with further questions. But thank you very much for participating today. Greatly appreciate your attendance, and hopefully we will see your application for January 2025. Take care.